drink and I know things. That's what I do.
Welcome back to Flagons and Dragons. I'm Jamie G. Esquire the Fifth, not the Fifth Squire. It's an important distinction. I'm here at Magna Mills and the Soup Deucer, and we'd like to invite you to join us on our journey back to Westeros. We're going to discuss the teaser trailer for the upcoming Game of Thrones spin-off, A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms. Soup, are you ready to head back to Westeros?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Looking forward to it, man. Always been a fan since Game of Thrones and House of Dragon, and this will be a nice get us by until then kind of kind of series or something to watch. And it was kind of like it was sprung on me. I didn't even realize that this was even happening until like last week. The trailer came out, and I was like, oh, nice. So yeah, looking forward to it, man.
Hopefully, it will be a pleasant surprise here. I know we're all big Game of Thrones fans, not necessarily thrilled with the way it ended, but you're right. I mean, they're taking 2+ years between House of the Dragon season, so we need something. Hopefully, this will kind of, satisfy our fix, and we're trying to help you satisfy your itch for some Game of Thrones content here on Flagons and Dragons. Thanks for checking out our show. We are presented by Regular Dudes Watch Stuff. You can find our content wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Find us on social media at Dudes Watch Stuff and on the web at dudeswatchstuff.com. Try to keep it nice and easy to remember, just like the flaps, FLAPS. Follow, like, and please subscribe. If you had fun, please remember to press the thumb.
Before we go any further, be aware there could be some spoilers for Game of Thrones, House of the Dragon, and any of the writings of George R.R. Martin. We're not planning on dropping anything major here, but it's possible something slips. So don't say we didn't warn you.
Every once in a while, it just pops in there like the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. We are here to talk about A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms. This is a prequel set about 100 years before the show, the events of Game of Thrones. The timeline's a little bit different in the books. This is based on the Tales of Dunk and Egg novellas. There are currently 3 of these. There are supposed to be somewhere between 6 and 12, depending on which of George's interviews you read. Would like to see more. I think it's a pretty fertile ground for adaptation. They thought at one point about making these an animated thing, and I kind of like what we're seeing here in the trailer. We are not quite there yet. The nuts and bolts are that this is 6 episodes. The first is going to premiere on January 18th, 2026. Will be on HBO Max. Ira Parker is the showrunner coming over from House of the Dragon. The main stars are Peter Claffey as Sir Duncan the Tall, aka Dunk, Dexter Soul Aniselis as Prince Aegon Targaryen, aka Egg, Finn Barrett as Prince Aeron Targaryen, aka Bright Flame, Bertie Cavill as Prince Baelor Targaryen, aka Breakspear, Tazan Crawford as Tanzel, a Dornish puppeteer, Daniel Ingus as Sir Lionel Baratheon, and Sam Spradell as Prince Maekar Targaryen. And that's a lot of Targaryens here and a couple of Baratheons. So some names we know, but not necessarily, a lot of Starks or anything like that. Guys, how are we feeling about the Game of Thrones universe these days? We've both obviously seen all of the OG show. We've all watched House of the Dragon. How are you feeling about this? Are you excited to see another prequel? Jamie G, how are you feeling here? Is your flagging about, half full, fully full for this? Like, what's your thirst level here for more House of the Dragon, Game of Thrones content?
It's full and it's frothy. I love this universe. I'm excited to go back into it. You almost forget about House of the Dragon just because so much we live in a world now where like it's acceptable to go, 2 to 2.5 years without releasing something new. And I say that in jest because it's completely unacceptable, but yet what are we to do? We're forced to deal with it. So I like that they're giving us something else here. I'm really excited about it. I think there's a lot of different ways they can go with kind of these adaptations. We're kind of doing another one, before. So we're starting to see more and more of the Targaryen stuff, which is cool. I hope that they do a bunch of different things, man, but I'm definitely excited about this one.
How you feeling, Soup? Yeah, you kind of, thirsty to go back to Westeros, and you like that we're getting another prequel here.
Yeah, absolutely, man. If you get the same that same universe, man, and character, and not that they're going to be the same characters, but families and whatnot, ancestry and shit like that. I think that's kind of cool, and I like where some shows are going, and hopefully other shows trends and other shows follow this kind of format where you're going to be 2 seasons or 2 years for a new season. You throw that spin-off show in between and layer them, and then you can keep your show going, or at least that universe going for like, now there's something new every year, whether it's House of Dragon or the Night of the Seven Kingdoms or The Boys or Gen V. If you stagger them, then doesn't feel like you're still waiting, but you still get something in between.
Right, or you could just be the bear and drop all the episodes, at the exact same time, old school style. It's funny that the full binge is old school, and this is a little bit different than Game of Thrones or House of the Dragon. Only 6 episodes, but considering they're based on novellas, I think that's fair. And a January premiere. I don't think Game of Thrones never did that, right? I don't think Game of Thrones ever dropped in like January. JBG, how are you feeling about this? Kind of a little bit shorter episode count in the midwinter drop. Thankfully, it is towards the end of the football regular season, but still, right in the heat of the playoffs.
Yeah, heat of the playoffs here, but that's okay because, when we're getting down to the end of January here, we're probably nearing the championship games for each conference, which is really just 2 football games. And then, of course, in February, we'll just have the one with the Super Bowl. So, it's kind of coming at a good time, I think, when football's slowing down and you're looking for something else. That time frame of like as soon as football ends is usually pretty brutal. So I'm glad to have something here to kind of keep us get us through that part of time. So I like the timing of it, honestly. I'm glad it's not like I don't have to wait till spring or something. So I like it.
Yeah, I don't know if there's a lot else that at least like, we really talk about a lot that's, dropping then. I don't think obviously we're getting another season of Severance then. Soup, how you feel about this, man? Kind of mid-January launch, 6 episodes and going back to the one per week. No 3 up front, no all at once, just the classic 1 per week for 6 weeks. You feeling it?
I kind of like it. Yeah, I definitely like it, man. I think it's going to move along very well, and it's older old school. One at a time, dude. Just let it do it, man. I like it.
I think the school stays the same. We just keep getting older,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
It'd be a lot cooler if you did. I
Oh,
think
right.
we're ready. I think we're ready here to discuss the trailer. We got a clip to get us started.
What's your name?
Sir Duncan the Tall.
Never heard of him.
Do you know every knight in the Seven Kingdoms then?
The good ones. If you could bring me to Ashford, I could squire for you, sir.
Rob me, and I'll hunt you down with dogs.
You don't have dogs!
I'll get some.
Where?
Oh!
I think maybe the first thing here, even in House of the Dragon, Game of Thrones, we've always had some actors, even if we weren't incredibly familiar with them. We at least kind of knew some names. Here, I did some digging. There's a couple of these actors I've seen in a couple of things before, but nothing that jumped off the top. Soup, what do you think? You like the idea that they're going with unknowns here?
Yeah, man. Let people get known. I definitely like it. Sometimes you want like a name to but they're already, it's Game of Thrones universe, dude. Seven Kingdom shit. They're gonna I don't know that they need a huge name to carry the show because the show already has the reputation. Well, maybe not this particular show, but judging on that, I feel like it'll get plenty of attention right away. So I don't know that it was necessary. So maybe it's a smart play. It does give people a chance to kind of make a name for themselves as well.
And I think it makes sense too, because it's kind of like coming from a different viewpoint. Usually we're like dealing with the houses and kind of some of the, the nobles of Westeros here. This is the guy who started out as a hedge knight. So it's kind of more of a top down view. So that maybe ties in a little bit, right, Jamie G? So makes more sense to have unknown actors as more kind of common folk theoretically.
It does, but I also say too, like to Soup's point, like everyone kind of knows, the reputation of the Game of Thrones universe, and there's a nice excitement around that where you don't need like a Sean Bean, to come in and be like that one big guy like Game of Thrones needed in season 1, right? So I don't think they need that. The other thing that I really like about this is they've now given us 2 series where they've cast exceptionally well. And I understand there's different people behind this than there were with Game of Thrones and the House of the Dragon, but they've casted so well for all these shows that I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt here.
Yeah, they've always done a good job of that, although I try to remember the original Game of Thrones pilot. And I guess you pointed out, like you said, they cast it really well. I've read the novellas. I don't think either of y'all have. So in my head, I kind of had pictures of Duncan Egg. I am incredibly like just astonished how much they actually managed to cast someone who looks like an egg as Egg. That is pretty astounding. But I thought Sir Duncan the Tall would be taller. Like that's kind of his defining characteristic is that he's tall. What do you think, Soup? Is he tall enough to be called someone like Sir Duncan the Tall? Like, don't you think like they're like really, really tall? He feels like this dude's like 6'4". I'm thinking like 6'10" or something.
Right, right, yeah. It doesn't look like he's really that tall. Maybe, I mean, I don't know, maybe did you ever see him next to anybody other than the real little person?
Not
Like
really. So
similarly?
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, you saw him kind of on the line, but you can never tell with like perspective. So it's tough to get an idea of exactly how big he is. But I
You
was
would
hoping,
expect the guy,
honestly,
you expect him to be closer to like, yeah, 7 feet maybe, 6'10", 6'11",
yeah,
dude.
as he's one of those dudes like when when you read the novellas and you meet the people, the first thing they're just taken away with how big he is. Like, oh
Hmm.
my God, just look at the size of him.
Right.
So there's
Big
definitely
man, that's
a
for
bit of
sure.
that in that.
He's no Too Tall Jones, and maybe that's the one thing. Maybe we'll see it more when we get more where there'll be more shots where he really looks as big as he's supposed to or whatever. But it didn't seem like strikingly tall. It's not like they cast Andre the Giant or anything.
Right. Remember like the mountain from the first season of Game of Thrones? Like he was really tall but skinny as hell. I think we went through three mountains before we wound up on like the best one. Like the third one, I think was obviously the best casting there. So he doesn't have to be super husky. I just felt when you're called the tall, the expectation is you're like really, really tall, I feel. Like if someone was called the fat, you would expect them to be incredibly fat. Like that's kind of how it works like that. And are you all cool with it being kind of a smaller show? Again, we're more from the viewpoint of the common folk. Not going to be maybe as many big battles, that sort of thing. Jamie G, you like this concept? Again, we're going to be building up to something. I don't want to give away any spoilers, but you can see a bit of it in the trailer. It doesn't take a lot of genius math to figure out kind of what's going on there. Do you like the idea though that we're not going to get, it's not all about necessarily got getting to the big battle or whatever. It's just kind of more day-to-day struggles.
Honestly, I am, and in both Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon, I've always really enjoyed when we've got out into Pea Bottom or into kind of the common folk area, the small folk area, where you kind of see the day-to-day life and how life is out there. It's so much different than how it is in the Red Keep, for example. So I'm a big fan of this. I'm curious to see kind of from that perspective of the commoners. I think it's going to be awesome. It's a nice balance to what we've had with the other two series so far.
Yeah, Soup, I bet you're kind of a fan of kind of getting more of this kind of, viewpoint of the regular folk and even, maybe a little bit more of a comedic take that we didn't get a lot of that in House of the Dragon, especially, some of my favorite stuff in Game of Thrones, with Jaime and Brienne or Bronn and Tyrion just kind of hacking it up and just kind of ripping on people or whatever. So I think we could get more of that here. I would be a fan of that. You feeling that, Soup?
It seems like it's got that kind of vibe, yeah, man, a little bit lighter, but it looks like there's going to be some action, and yeah, I like the perspective. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I will say from having read the novellas, again, no spoilers, they are stretching this out a little bit. So I'm curious as to what they're going to do. It does seem like they're going to tie in probably some of the stuff from like the other George R.R. Martin materials to do a lot of backstory with the Targaryens. Again, none of these people are necessarily going to cross over with characters we know in Game of Thrones. There is, one, I won't spoil it here. Well, actually, you know what? Three. Here's a spoiler warning. I'm going to spoil a little something for Game of Thrones, but you have chance to check out if you want. Three, two, one. The one dude that we probably will meet is Brendan Rivers, aka the Three Eye Raven. Remember, like the dude in the tree
Yeah.
in Game of Thrones? Like he will probably be the one dude who shows up and kind of connects things a little bit, or like the one dude, kind of we know of. Otherwise, it's going to be pretty much a bunch of new characters. My guess is we're going to get, some Targaryen scheming and all that good stuff. Targaryens, Baratheons. Eh, Jamie G, are you worried about trying to keep up with all the names again? I mean, it felt like it took a whole season of House of the Dragon to get them all straight here. And now we got Targaryens with short hair. I mean, there's a lot going on here. I'm a little bit worried about keeping up with them all, but they do all have cool nicknames, which helps.
Well, the nicknames will help. I was a little bit taken back on a Targaryen without long streaming blonde hair, so that was interesting. Yeah, I think so. I think we'll figure it out because I think I'm hoping that it's not going to be overdone with House of the Dragon. It was so intense because you had basically had like three families smushed into one, and you're trying to learn them all. So I'm hoping with this one it's a little bit easier.
What do you think, Supa? You think this is going to be one that's really complex, or do you think this is going to be a little bit easier to follow maybe than some of the other Game of Thrones shows?
It seems like it might be easier to follow just because of, I haven't read the novellas, man, but judging by it's based off of that, you kind of have to condense it. So doesn't seem like there would be a whole, real broad, I mean, we're going to get into Starks and, um, Lannisters and all the other fucking, like, there were so many, dude, like, think about Game of Thrones. So maybe some of those names will jump out, and I'd like to see some of them, because you do want it to relate to the other shows a little bit.
Yeah, I think they'll probably find a good way to thread the needle here. They did a pretty decent job with it of House of the Dragon, and there are definitely going to be some opportunities here. Again, maybe sometimes the Targaryens get a kind of a little bit of sameness to them, but there's also based on at least what they're drawing from here, which is I'm assuming the Hedge Knight, the first novella, a chance to be a little bit more episodic, more or less like they go on little quests, and then we probably check in with the Targaryens and their scheming in the background, which will probably relate to things that we know from Game of Thrones and maybe even tying back into House of the Dragon. I'm not quite sure how long this is set after House of the Dragon, but my guess is they're going to try to kind of build this up. But overall, I think I am very, very pleased with this. Again, they talked about doing different things with this source material, possibly even doing an animated thing. Based on what I'm seeing, I'm kind of hoping for something that's, just fun to watch, and it's maybe not as heavy lifting, but still does offer, some of that opportunity to theorize and think about what's coming next and all that good stuff. So, I would say, my flagon is pretty full for this one. I'm very excited. JBG, what's your anticipation level here? Is your flagon still pretty full after having watched the trailer?
Yeah, it's full. It's not, it's borderline cup runneth over, but I've already taken a sip or two, so I'm just got a nice healthy pint here.
Yeah, how you doing? So how's your flagon? I mean, are you just pouring wine in there? I mean, are you just beering it up, or you even pouring a little wine out for this?
I'm just a beer tonight, but yeah, if I'm drinking out of the flagon, it might be mead. It might be mead, or it might be full of rice.
Oh, all right. Or you can get a little
If you're bought
grog
for the
going, dude. We
price.
can get a little
But
grog,
For the
dude.
price of flagon of rice.
but here's one thing I was thinking, man. This Night of the Seven Kingdoms takes place 100 years before Game of Thrones, but after House of Dragon, which is currently a show in the middle of happening. So are there going to be, or you would hope there wouldn't be, spoilers even in conversation about things that happened whenever House of Dragon happened in this show? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't think they're going to directly reference the kind of some of the things that ultimately happen. Hopefully not, anyways. Especially because
I
they
would
are
hope not.
going on at the same time. That does, yeah, you don't want, no spoilers, please.
Our flagons, unfortunately, are empty. We drank them, but they will be full to the brim when the next trailer of A Night of the Seven Kingdoms drops. We will be here to talk about it, and we hope that you'll join us. So if you haven't done so yet, throw the thumb, like, and subscribe. We appreciate you being with us. Thanks again for checking out another episode, and we'll see you on the other stuff. And oh, by the way, we got a bunch of other stuff you should check out too. Mills will let you know where you can find all of our details.
Got a lot of stuff, and the easiest way to find it is to just go ahead and search for us wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. We are Flagons and Dragons, presented by Regular Dudes Watch Stuff. Thanks again for checking out the show. You can also find us on social media at Dudes Watch Stuff and on the web at dudeswatchstuff.com. Very simple, very easy to remember, just like the flaps, FLAPS. Very crucial to our success. Follow, like, and please subscribe. If you had fun, please touch the thumb.
So until next time, keep your flagons full and your dragons hot.